In the book of Acts, we see Paul in the Areopagus introducing to the sophisticated Greeks who are gathered there the Christian truth of the eventual resurrection of the body. And of course, this is connected with Christ's own resurrection, his bodily resurrection from the dead. And we believe as a point of faith that Christ shares that bodily resurrection with us. That happens at the very end of time, at the general judgment, when God reconstitutes our bodies in a miraculous fashion. St. Paul says that what is sown perishable is raised imperishable, referring to that final resurrection of the body, to indicate that the body that we sow in the earth, or which is consumed by fire or lost in the sea, depending on where we find ourselves at the end, doesn't really constitute a seed of what happens later. So this is going to be so miraculous an event that there's no seed in our natural bodies for it. God will somehow reconstitute us in perfection, and most of the saints will tell us that our resurrected, glorified bodies, if we're in heaven, will be perfect bodies, subject to the movements of the soul in ways that our current body is not. Our bodies sort of weigh down the soul. They're beautiful things and gifts of God, of course, but they add a kind of plodding or slowness to our human experience. Our minds can move very quickly. Our bodies move much more slowly. So there's a little tension between the body and soul in this life. In that experience, the body will be completely apt to the movements of the soul. St. Thomas says that when our souls are resurrected in glory, that the joy we enjoy, the vision of love, of goodness, of truth that we enjoy in our souls will overflow or echo or redound into the body. But this was a scandal to the Greeks at the Areopagus, the idea of the body having some sort of role in this final spiritual fulfillment of things. And it continues to be somewhat of a scandal for us now, because we tend to super spiritualize when we're not overly carnalizing things. Those are those two human options. And so we tend to think of this as spiritual as being purely spiritual all the way through. And if we're going to unite ourselves with God, who is a perfect spirit, that perhaps we will just be perfect spirits too. But God reveals to us in Christ, and actually shows us in Christ, the reality of the glorified body. So this is a datum of faith which we must accept, and we can be sure that it promises glory. Right, that it will make us complete. There's a certain sense to that, a fittingness, because we're made to be joined to a body. That's what God made us to be originally, a composite of body and soul. He didn't will death. What is death? Death is the separation of body and soul. That's why we experience it as a tragedy, because it's not really supposed to happen. When it does happen, it makes sense that God would will that it be undone. And that's what we mean when we say that in the end, death is fully overcome. It's by way of the rejoining of the glorified soul with a glorified body that death is finally destroyed. Because death is precisely that separation of the body and soul. So the reunification of the two is fitting. It makes all the sense in the world, because this is what God made us to be in the beginning. And we're only fully ourselves, only really persons in the fullest sense, when our souls are rejoined to our body now in glory.